Sandy?
Sorry,
How are you?
I unmute. Good. How are you?
Doing very well. Let's let everybody in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So sorry we're a few minutes late. The previous meeting just they kept talking and they had good things to say, and it's like I didn't want to tell the speaker, oh, you've got to shut up, I've got to shut down the meeting. People were saying thank you to him, so it would have been rude to, but I was being I'm being rude either way, guys. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's let everybody in. A few people still showing up here. I'm very glad to see each one of you. I appreciate you coming on camera so we can see you. I see
For
Michelle.
some reason, my camera is not working. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Welcome. And I appreciate if your camera isn't working, you can't get off camera, but I'm not going to be upset about it, okay? Let's start
Trying
with
to get it to work.
I want to verify some addresses. The gentleman from Watermark came back from vacation today, and I looked at my addresses and I went, I better check these before I send them, because I've got some 3- and 4-digit zip codes, which if you know zip codes, you know that could be a problem. And they're in Excel. So, Excel eats the first zeros if there's zero. So I want to be sure. Let's see. Do we have Rejoice on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Rejoice, I had got your zip code as being 4 digits. Is there a 0 at the beginning?
No.
Okay, what is your zip code or code?
B1P4Z5.
Could you drop that in the chat for me?
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, because I've got 4 digits. It just didn't seem right. And
Indian zip codes are wacky. They're not like ours.
I know, but I didn't have what I expected, and I knew we couldn't ship it that way. So Stephen, I don't see Stephen on yet. So we will wait on him. I have addresses for everyone else. I've got phone numbers for everyone else. Candy, are you here? Candy, I don't see you. Okay, so everybody else, Michelle? No, I need addresses for you folks. Michelle, Dulce, Aaron, and Cossie. If you can send me private messages on chat with your address and your phone number, I will get that added to my spreadsheet and send it out to the guide so he can ship out your books tomorrow. Again, if you're within the United States, I know we can ship books. Those folks that are outside of the United States, I don't know, because as you know, he was on vacation. I couldn't ask him questions. If he can't ship a book to you, we will give you the PDF online, so you have access to everything everyone else. Okay? Let us get started. Thank you, those of you who sent me your spreadsheets with your answers. I have a few that I want to go over just to be sure that we're all on the same page, because half or more of you didn't get them right, or at least some of you didn't get them right. And I want to be sure that you've got a really firm foundation in chapters 1 and 2. So let me expand this here. We are going to start with number 7. Let's see. Number 7 is 1.1. Question 7. We're just going to jump to the answer. This is the end of 1.1. I can't tell you the page number, unfortunately, but I do encourage you to grab your book and let's look at it together. The 6 knowledge areas of the Babok guide, the list, the 6 knowledge areas. You're going to memorize this eventually. You got to get it right now. I had 2 of you that didn't get the right answer, and that's just of those people that actually got their answers. Everybody else, you got it right. But let's go on. The next one is number 21, which is in 1.3. I'm sorry, it's in 1.4. It's the very beginning. Which statement best describes knowledge areas in the Babok guide? The answer to that, knowledge areas are a collection of logically, but not sequentially, related tasks which describe specific activities that accomplish the purpose of their associated knowledge area. So it's like they took tasks that were related and they put them all together just so it has a container for you to learn these tasks together. And that's the only reason it's in that knowledge area. Okay, we're going to jump to 1.4.2, which is again in knowledge areas. And question number 30. What do the tasks in the knowledge area business analysis, planning, and monitoring produce? If it's asking a question about producing, it's wanting outputs. The outputs, the correct answer was A. Outputs that are used are as key inputs and guidelines for other tasks throughout the Babok guide. That seems weird. Let me go back to the question. Yep. Okay, that's correct. So it's just if a knowledge area or a task is producing it, it's going to be an output. Everybody on board with that? Vista 5?
So
Can't
Thea,
see
what
why.
I struggled with is all the answers have got outputs, but if the different words are guidelines, standards, references, frameworks,
Yeah.
and I was doing the closed book, not the open book. So
Right.
then, when you're reading it, it all seems the same, but it's like they wanted us to use the exact words that are used in the Babok, which was really difficult because you can't remember every word that you read.
It's
Yep.
true. And Rejoice, you say this perfectly at the right time. One of the things that you've got to get really deeply ingrained in your head is it doesn't matter what you think the right answer is. It matters what the Babok says the right answer is. And you've got to know what's the best answer according to the Babok. And I realize these words are really close. It's almost the same answers. It's just that one word. You're going to learn it so well that you're going to recognize it. And it's like, well, of course, that's the answer. Because you hear the voice of the Babok in your head after a while. You're going to process this where it becomes part of you. Okay.
Sure.
All right, let's go to 32. What does the knowledge area elicitation and collaboration describe? So this is the definition or the purpose of this knowledge area. So knowledge area is elicitation and collaboration. That's the second knowledge area or chapter 4, depending on how you look at it. And it describes the communication with stakeholders once the business analysis information is assembled and the ongoing collaboration with them throughout the business analysis activities. So you're actually doing elicitation from the very first moment you hear about the project until the project is actually retired, because you're actually working through what can we do better, the continuous improvement solution evaluation. Okay. Number 34. What does the knowledge area strategy analysis describe? So these are the purposes. And most of you got these right. So once we get into studying everything, you're going to see the purpose a great deal. Okay, jumping down to chapter 2. Business analysis key concepts. Here's Stephen. Chapter 2, business analysis key concepts covers what topics? It covers the core concept model, which is called the BACCM. It covers key terms. It covers requirements, classification, schema, stakeholders, requirements, and designs. Stephen, we're going over some of the questions that the most people got incorrect.
Cool.
And the last one is the very last one, number 45 in chapter 2. Let's go into the answer. Okay, this is, let me grab the book real quick. Stephen, would you do me a favor and in a private message in the chat, give me your address with the zip code, because I've got a 3-digit zip code for you and I know that's not right.
Okay.
Downloads. Move this over. Sorry, guys. I had it open a while ago. Okay. End of chapter 2. I want to show you this graphic. This is the graphic that we're talking about. Those of you who have your books know what I mean. It's this one right here. This is the requirements and design cycle. So you start with what the business requirement. Why do I want it? And you go through some kind
Should
of
we be
design.
seeing your screen? Because we're only seeing you.
I am so sorry. I've been brilliant on screen. I would just want you to know that. Okay, let's see. I'm on this screen too. Very good. Thank you for telling me. Okay, the business requirements. And then we go through design and we talk about what are the stakeholders' needs. We go through some more design, we go through solution requirements, and we get to what do I want, which is the business, what do they want, and what do the technical folks want. And then we get into what are the transition requirements, and then we go back to the center. Does this look familiar to you? Yeah, I know you'd see it. Okay, so let's go to we need to talk about underlying competencies. How many of you got to read underlying competencies? Yeah? Did we answer questions about underlying competencies last week? We haven't yet, have we?
That's 9, right?
That's 9. Yes, that is 9.
I
Okay,
think
very good.
we started with a couple questions, I think.
I apologize. I'm teaching the same class, but twice as often at work. And it's like, I remember doing it, but I don't know which class it was. So please be patient with me there. Okay, I want to show you this. This is the spreadsheet. I think I've shared it with every one of you. Underlying competencies, this list right here. This is what I want you to see. Underlying competencies, like the knowledge areas, is concepts that were bundled up into something that seemed like a good label and put together just so you can understand it. So underlying competencies, analytical thinking and problem solving, has creative thinking, decision making, learning, etc. If you've read chapter 9, you have seen some things in there. It's like, I know this, and then you get to one sentence that is like, oh, that's new. You know, it's going to tell you different characteristics of some things that you might not have thought of earlier. One of the things I want you to look at as you read chapter 9 is this. It's got some ways to evaluate. Let me go back. Let me go on to chapter 9 here. Chapter 9 has, it should be right about here. Okay, here's interaction skills. Just one of the areas within, this is one of the sections. Within interaction skills are facilitation, leadership and influencing, teamwork, negotiation and conflict resolution, and teaching. Things that you probably use almost on a daily basis. But what I want you to see is the structure of this. It's giving you the purpose. It'll give you a definition, which is just expounding on it. And it gives you effectiveness measures. This is the thing that you're going to find some questions in Watermark about. It's going to say, which of these is an effectiveness measure of this underlying competency? You need to read this enough to just not memorize it, just have a really good round understanding of it. What this is going to do is it's going to give you things like, if it gives you a scenario, like Um, a BA needs to ensure that participants in a discussion correctly understand each other's position. Which underlying competency are they demonstrating? And so you would need to know what that's connected to. I've had some students that they make themselves flashcards for this. I've had other students that they just make themselves lists. Some students can read it and they learn it, but they're the lucky ones. So you figure out how you need to do this to just kind of get the effectiveness measure, the purpose of the underlying competency attached to that underlying competency. It's also important that in these groups, you understand what these competencies are and what they ladder up to. So there's 5 groups, and each group has some number of competencies underneath them. Now, I would go through the Watermark's underlying competencies practice test questions with you, but I'm going to be honest, they're not great. They do not give us what we need. You know, I could do them with you. Watermark does things like a BA is really focused on data. So which thing would they ignore? And it has Maslow's hierarchy as one of the answers, and it's the right answer. Maslow's hierarchy is nowhere in this book, and you're not going to see it on the test either. So instead of spending your time making us go through that exercise of nothing but frustration, I just want to get you to be aware of why I want you to read underlying competencies. So that's just a reading assignment. Number 2 is the chapter 11. Chapter 11 perspectives. Did I talk to y'all about chapter 11 already? Okay, so you understand chapter 11 has very little in it for you, but you need to know those 2 things. Okay, we're good there. How do y'all feel about your grasp of the material that we've gone over so far, other than underlying competencies, getting deep into it? You can come off mute, you can give me fist of 5, whatever you want.
I just think once I get familiar with the terms the Babok uses, I'll be fine. Like the quiz, I bombed that whole section 1.4 just because they all pretty much meant the same thing. I just didn't know the Babok words.
Yeah.
Yep.
You'll learn the Babok words. Anybody else?
I had
Okay.
The same issue as Sandy did, so otherwise I'm good.
Well, that's part of the thing is it's like, I think I gave y'all this analogy. It's like you got hired by a brand new company and they do things just a little bit differently than your old company. So you have to learn their language and their terms and their practices. That's what we're doing for this, is we're learning the way the Babok does it. Okay. What I want to do now is, how many of you have read chapter 3?
I have.
Yeah, several of you. Good, good. I want to draw your attention to this. In chapter 3, I've got it in the other spreadsheet. I need to update this spreadsheet. I think I have it in your spreadsheet. So right about, there's task list 1. Right about here, there's another tab that's task to techniques in the spreadsheet that I gave to you. And in it, it has for task 1, there's look at these techniques. And that's one reason I have my underlying competencies and my techniques in 2 separate books now, so that I can look at them at the same time and go back and forth. But my goal here is so that you learn the techniques as we go along, that you envision doing this technique with this task. And then when we get through all of the when we get through all of the tasks in all of 6 knowledge areas, you will have learned all 50 techniques. Now I'm going to show you this. If we move over to here, this is the breakdown of business analysis, planning and monitoring, chapter 3, and which techniques are used. For instance, brainstorming is used for all 5 of the tasks in chapter 1, in chapter 3. So I went through and I picked, if I were to use brainstorming in any of the tasks throughout all of the different knowledge areas, which one would it be? And I highlighted it, and that's what's on the list that is task to techniques tab. Now, so for plan business analysis approach, which is the first task in the technique, in the knowledge area, business analysis, planning and monitoring, there are more than the number of techniques I've given you on that list. There are other techniques possible, okay? And the Babok wants you to understand you have this list. These are the ones I want you to really learn as we go through it. Just be aware that there are others, but I want you to really learn them. Any questions? Did everyone receive this spreadsheet? Yes? Okay, then you have the tab techniques, tasks to techniques. So as you work through chapter 3, you're going to do that. But since most of you have already read chapter 3, I want to start with the practice test questions because I want to get you used to taking the practice test questions. So it is 7:30 my time. It's 8:30 Eastern, 9:30 Nova Scotia. I don't know where all of you are. It is 30 minutes into this. In about I tell you what, before we start the practice test questions, let's take a 5-minute break and come back at 30 after. That way everyone has a chance to, you know, get a drink of water, use the bathroom, whatever. And we will be back here at 30 after, okay? All right, see you then. Hussey, are you here?
Yes, I am.
would you please, in a private message in chat, send me your address and phone number?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've got Stephen, Roberta, Sandra, Robin, Aaron, Michelle, Disha, Jovan, Jennifer, Tamara. And it's Dulce. I don't see Dulce. Okay. I need Candy. Oh, well, my goodness. Apparently, Dulce and Candy are the same person. Which, if you know Spanish and English, it's like, well, duh. My brain just figured it out. So sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that
We-
spreadsheet you were sharing,
Yes.
I don't know if I see that one.
Okay.
It's in that Google Drive.
It is, I think it's in the Google Drive, but I sent it by email to everyone.
Oh, so okay. Let me go through there.
Does
Oh,
it
is that-
start with the 4 zeros?
Yes, it starts with zeros.
Okay, Michelle, I dropped it into our Teams folder.
Okay, thank you.
I just downloaded it just now.
Would you check and be sure it has the tab that says task to technique as like the 4th tab?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Okay, so see, I made it on this computer and then I sent it to my work computer and I can't do a direct link. I have to do it by email. And so I made changes on that one and then this one didn't have it. So I was sending it back and forth trying to get it to right.
Actually, I'm not sure. No, it has techniques to task. I don't see it.
It's techniques to task is the one.
Okay.
If you open it up, it's going to have like 5 techniques to use for task 3.1.
Yep, it has brainstorming, business cases on the left, and then it just says plan business analysis approach in the next column.
All right. Okay, we are going to, let me share my screen. It says stop sharing, so I'm going to share again. We are going to go to practice test questions. So I realize not all of you have had a lot of time to read chapter 3. I hope that you've read it through at least once. The whole goal of answering practice test questions is purely to help you identify areas that you need to strengthen. You know, it's like I didn't get that answer easily enough. So I'm going to take that area in the BABOK and I'm going to go put a post-it note that says, I need to focus on this. I need to strengthen this area. This is not an opportunity for you to shame yourself or beat yourself up. We are just starting this and there's a lot of detail. Okay. So I encourage you to get out your BABOK and get ready to make notes. If you make notes in a composition book or a spiral instead, I don't care. Just have a place to do it, because what I've discovered is people that answer questions and go, oh, I only got 6 out of 10 and they have no clue what the other 4 are, they don't get better. It's the people that say, oh, I need to study this one area, and they know exactly what to spend their time on instead of having this random, whole chapter to have to go back and look at. So I'm going to start by reading the question. I'm going to ask if you can figure out which task it is. I'm not expecting y'all to be perfect. I do expect you to speak up, however, because we can say, well, it's that one because we know it's that one word that gets us. One of y'all is telling me that because I had so many answers that were the same on the questions, that it was kind of freaky, and I apologize. That is totally my fault. I spent so much time trying to get every single quote that I thought was important that I didn't go back and randomize the answers from being too many that were A in a row. Okay. Which of the following outputs will identify the stakeholder who will be responsible for setting priorities? So can you think of which task in chapter 3 that we identify who's going to be responsible for setting priorities?
I go with B, stakeholder engagement approach, but then I'm noodling on C, but my strong B.
Okay. Okay, so this is what you think is the answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Same with me. Option B.
Okay. Why do y'all like B?
The question sounds to me, well, it's asking for what's the output, right? And then it's saying who's the output for setting priorities, like who sets the priorities for the entire program? And if I think about it as you have to identify your stakeholders first, and they're the ones that you go to when it comes to requirements gathering, managing, requirements gathering, and just laying out what the project task item needs, I think.
Okay. Does anyone else have a different answer?
I think that option
C.
makes more sense because the other options which are given don't really align well or don't really sit well. So even if you go by the elimination method, option B sits pretty well.
Okay.
I
Bob,
think it's C.
why do you like C?
Setting priorities is what is drawing me to the governance approach.
What do we do in the governance approach that allows you to identify who sets priorities? That's the answer. You're right. Let's choose C and see what happens. In addition, not only do you identify who is responsible for setting priorities, in addition, it will identify the stakeholders who have the responsibility and authority to make decisions about business analysis work and who will approve changes to BA information. This is a perfect example of B makes perfect sense according to what your real life says. We're not in your real life. We're in the BABOK. So C is the right answer.
Communicate with the stakeholders. C is about how you make decisions and control things during the work.
That's correct. That is correct.
I could get that, but I could have a pushback interpretation because like when I get what you're saying, it's not about our work, it's what about the BABOK says. But when it reads, it says who will be responsible for setting priorities. In my mind, I thought, are we at the beginning of gathering the requirements, or is this just for everything a part of the program or the project?
This entire chapter is what you do. You start it before the project even begins. And then as the project changes, for instance, your PM leaves and you get a new PM, then you have to update some things in it, your stakeholder list. So this is what you do from the very beginning, and then it tracks in for the rest of the project.
I think the focus you have to look at the beginning of the question because it's asking what output is going to identify the stakeholders. And like your output from like, you have to know who your stakeholders are before you can have your stakeholder engagement. And that's why you get the list of who your stakeholders are from your governance. So the question is tricky, but you're looking for like what step gives you the output to identify the stakeholders.
Aaron, you're really close. Each of these are outputs of one of 4 of the 5 different tasks. So this is a list of outputs, and only one of these, the governance approach, has in there which stakeholder will be responsible for setting priorities.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. So thank you for clarifying.
Good. We said the same thing in different words, which is just fine. Okay, let's move on.
Question here, Tim,
yes.
before you move
Yes,
forward.
Kelsey.
So, do you think it's a great idea to kind of know like every input related to the task itself? You think that can help?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's one reason whenever I gave y'all this, here it is. It actually has, here's a list of all the inputs. Here's the list, the outputs are further. Let me slide over here. Here's the output and the explanation of what the purpose of the output is.
Well, okay. Let me rephrase my question. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you think we should memorize it?
I've had students that they memorized it, and I've had students that they got very, very familiar with it, and they were both successful. So if you're capable of memorizing it, it's great. I did not memorize it. I got familiar enough to say, that's one reason I color coded and used all these funky little fonts, because I could say, look, needs is in 4 different tasks, and why is it in these tasks? I had to analyze it using the spreadsheet because just doing it with text wasn't enough for me. But yeah, I think it's a good idea.
It
I've
depends
not
on
seen
your learning style. So I love looking at flowcharts. That was very helpful for me. Other people may like text. I will also say that they're being kind of unfair here because there's a pretty big overlap in that question with project management. So before you really begin to do work, you set up a lot of mechanisms for the work that you're going to do. I think if you look over a whole life cycle, the BA part is mostly in the figuring out what's going on to a lesser degree in figuring out what the requirements are in some parts of the design. Whereas the project management is more about facilitation of the entire process without going into the details. Now, in reality, everybody should understand the entire life cycle from the definition of the problem, which you may or may not be involved in, to the setup of the working environment, all the way through to implementation and test. And the more you know about the entire oeuvre, the better off you're going to be.
Well, that's a good point. So what you're saying is, so because I'm in project management, you're saying from a mindset, well, it sounds like I'm getting from a mindset perspective, business analyst comes in, like you said, gathering all of the requirements well, and then as you move along the journey, you get to understand where things go. Did I record that correctly?
Yeah, and you also have to know what has gone on before you get involved in an effort as a BA if you were not involved from the beginning. A lot of people say, okay, BAs are gonna go in this little box of a life cycle that's like that. And my feeling is that BAs should probably participate in as much of the life cycle as possible to learn and also to guide and interact and facilitate and help aid in communication. But they really need to know, just so they know what where the stuff that comes to you came from and where the stuff that people downstream need, what they need.
So then I have a final question. Sorry, Thea, before you move on. Is the BA responsible for setting governance or responsible for gathering the people who set the governance?
Okay. the BA is responsible for recording who gets to make the decisions. We don't, BAs don't get to make decisions. We find out where there's problems, and we can point to, this is going to blow up, and this is why I think so. And it's our job to raise the flag, but we don't get to make those decisions. Typically, it's the product owner, the project manager, or the sponsor who gets to make those decisions about governance and things like that.
Okay. I mean, we can move on whenever you're ready, but personally, I still have an argument with this question, but I'm not gonna hound on it because BA has a way of doing their things I can already tell. So whether I agree or disagree doesn't even matter.
Well, this
Well-
is what BABOK says, and
Yeah.
as we don't all necessarily fully agree, but
Yeah.
this is a standard that we've found that is being literally been taught around the world for at least 10 years. A lot of this was in the version before that, so there's another 6 years.
Yeah.
It works. We have been very effective in many ways because we have this standard. It doesn't mean that you have to follow it religiously or explicitly. That's what Agile is. You do what's best for the team, right?
Yeah.
This is what we have to learn to be able to pass the test.
Got
And
it.
getting it in our heads allows us to communicate with other people. For instance, if I went to Aaron's company and Aaron and I both knew all this stuff, I could walk in and use the terminology out of the BABOK, and he would know what I was talking about, and I would know what he's talking about. It's like, let me give you a better explanation. You've got 6 different departments, and each department does things their own way. That means that you can't move people from department to department easily, because then they've got to ramp up and be trained and learn the new stuff and if every department does it exactly the same way, it's easy to move people from one to another, right?
Yeah.
So we're learning the BABOK way. In fact,
Okay.
one of my students coined the word, that's BABOK-y. So, occasionally it's like, oh, that sounds BABOK-y. So you'll learn it. You'll learn it. Okay, let's go to
Okay.
the next one. Which of the following statements best describes the purpose of the planned business analysis governance task? So we're looking for purpose. That paragraph, that's purpose. And this may be just a portion of that, but it will be probably a quote. The primary purpose is to provide inputs into the business analysis performance assessment approach, which is the task that follows this one. The purpose is to define how decisions are made about the requirements and designs, including reviews, change control, approvals, and prioritization. The purpose is to provide oversight to the business analysis activities and results, or the purpose is to align with the project management governance approach. So, which ones can we eliminate?
A, C, and D.
So, sure it's B. Is that what you're saying, Kasi?
A, C, and D.
Yeah, A, C, and D can be eliminated, and I will keep B.
Okay. Okay. So project management governance approach is not part of the BABOK. That's a different book. And if you study both books, I'm sorry, this is this book. Providing oversight to business analysis activities and results such as doesn't fly. Let's go with Kasi's idea. Decision rights is the primary component of governance. One of the cool things in the BABOK that you'll read in 3.3, chapter 3, business analysis governance task, is if there is a tie, if you have people saying we can't do it that way and they can't come to an agreement in the governance process at the very beginning of the project, you came to, if there's a problem like that, who gets to make the decision? And usually it's the sponsor or the project manager or the product owner. Somebody is named. And that way, whenever that situation happens, because it might happen, you have it, it's like, okay, they make a decision, we go on, we already agreed to this method. So it's an effective thing to do. Elements included in the identify business analysis performance improvement task. So this is the task. Include which of the following. So we're looking in this one task at elements. So I'm going to read this list of elements and we have to look at what's different. Performance analysis, assessment measures, variance analysis, recommend actions for improvement. Performance analysis, assessment measures, analyze results, recommend actions for improvement. Performance reporting, assessment measures, analyze results, recommend actions for improvement. Or performance reporting, assessment measures, variance analysis, and recommend actions for improvement. Which ones can we eliminate?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
B and C.
Because of what are we, why can we eliminate C?
I'm just thinking that it's already talking about reporting before you even analyze the performance. It's just a thought. So
Okay,
the bottom two, C and D, are talking about reporting. So I'm focusing more on A and B, which focuses more on performance analysis first.
okay. So it's this reporting word that makes you want to eliminate those. So it's
Yes,
got to be A or B in your opinion. Okay.
I might have missed it completely, but yeah, that's my
It's okay.
reason.
This is how we learn. This is good.
Uh-huh.
I'm
So
with you on that. Just off the top of my head, because I didn't get to read the chapter yet, but I like performance analysis better. And I hope Babok does too.
okay.
There, I think personally, I will eliminate anything with variance.
Okay.
Because I do not recall seeing variance in the Babok. I can be wrong, but yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. So if we eliminate A, C, and D, do we think that B is the answer? Read through that. Is it Babaki?
Yeah. I say B is the answer. I pick B for me.
Okay, let's test it. Correct. This is a comprehensive list, which means a total, not partial, of the elements included in the Identify Business Analysis Performance Improvement task. I know I've shown you this 14,000 times, but I'm going to show it to you a few more because I want you to see it. Here are the elements. This is the elements column. And we're talking about performance improvements. So here's our list. It's right there ready for you to see. I've used the spreadsheet when answering questions because it allows me to zone in on it without having to flip pages. But I learn this way. It might not be the way you learn.
You know, the funny thing is, if you can go back to that spreadsheet, I
Yes.
was dimly aware of the structure of the BABOK, like in every task area, of which there are several per chapter. They all have the same structure, right? And Thea has helpfully labeled those in those columns. And I was never really aware that I concentrated on the inputs and outputs and kind of let everything else fall out based on my experience and some other ways I have of thinking about this stuff. And actually being aware of these columns and this repeating structure of the BABA is really super helpful. It'll help you isolate where to find things, where to think about things, and it's another pattern you can impose on this knowledge that you're putting together. And I think Thea, and it's really fun to see for me because in the detail that what she has learned since we started doing this a few years ago, she knows the details way better than I do. And that's super cool.
Thank you. Bob and I started working together in the Tampa Bay chapter as first place we ever met in 2021. And he has been by my side for every single one of these things. So it's been awesome. Okay, you've been hired as a BA on a 2-year project. Information that is unnecessary for this question, but they throw it in there just to, see if you're paying attention. Information is gathered through team interaction and feedback with rapid delivery of business value in short iterations. So we've got rapid delivery and short iterations. What approach is the project using? Is it adaptive, waterfall, plan-driven, or predictive?
Adaptive.
I say adaptive too, A.
A. Yep.
Very good. Adaptive approaches utilize short iterations and deliver value at the end of each. The emphasis is also on team interaction and feedback. Remember, this is what we would call agile. Yes, very good.
Agile.
Many planning methods fit somewhere along the continuum between blank and blank approaches. Which of the following best completes the statement above? Event-driven and date-driven, predictive and adaptive, predictive, value-driven, or plan-driven and change-driven? What's Babaki?
B.
B.
You guys are really rocking this. I think
On
you're
the
so-
actual exam, that predictive versus adaptive thing came up 2 or 3 times, which is a lot for one concept. So it's
Yes.
super important. And it's also really easy to understand.
I want to show you what happens if we get a wrong answer. It's going to show us some type of explanation of incorrect. Sometimes it's kind of lame, but then it's going to still show us the correct answer and give us the reference of where we can look to find the information. Let's move forward. Whitney is a BA working to identify quantitative and qualitative measures in order to identify performance improvements related to her business analysis work. Identifying quantitative measures is relatively easy. Qualitative measures are proving more difficult. You are a senior BA assigned as Whitney's mentor. Which of the following measures do you suggest? So what task are we talking about?
A. What task in terms of what?
Okay, before we answer, let's talk about the tasks. Which task is it we're talking about? Let me pull this open over here and do list 1. So here's what our options are. Right here.
Oh, performance. Identify business analysis performance.
Okay, that's a good answer. Why do you choose that answer?
The question is talking about, she's trying to figure out qualitative ways of doing what she's doing here with this question. And so that falls into performance. Now, I'm overthinking the answer to the question now, like performance of what exactly she's trying to do, but then the question doesn't say how. Identify content. Right.
So
A.
when I identify performance improvements relating to business analysis work. So you're right, it is identify business analysis performance improvements. So the thing we would suggest is have her check the effectiveness of her work products, frequency of changes to work products, accuracy estimates related to work products, or delivery dates of work products. So just, I know y'all all know this. I'm going to say it out loud. Quantitative is numbers. Qualitative is quality measurements. So which of these, to be qualitative, which of these would identify quality and not numbers?
I'm going with a soft B.
A. I'll go A.
Why do you like A?
It can't be counted.
Okay,
Yeah.
frequency changes, that's going to be numbers, right?
Mhm.
So we're not looking for numbers, we're looking for something else. Delivery dates for work products, that's still numbers because you're measuring how many days. So it's probably
A.
A or C.
So So I look at C saying it was numbers, but accurate estimates. So it's the quality of the estimates.
Okay, let's test A.
So I'm still between A and C.
You are right.
Okay.
Effectiveness of work products is a qualitative measure, including asking stakeholders whether Whitney's work products were easy to use as a standalone deliverable or whether they required extensive explanation. So you're getting quality feedback. You're getting the word feedback, not the number feedback, right? That's what we're looking for this. And here was our key. We were looking for qualitative measures. My Texas accent has so much trouble with that word. I just want y'all to know that. Okay. Which of the following statements is accurate about adaptive approaches? Adaptive means?
Agile.
Adaptive is agile. So adaptive approaches are typically call for formal documentation and representations. In an adaptive approach, mandatory requirements are often limited to prioritized requirements lists. In adaptive approach, planning may be done, but it is not essential. In an adaptive approach, tasks are performed in specific phases. So some of these talk about waterfall instead of agile. Which ones are those?
The first one is waterfall. Adaptive approaches typically call for formal documentation and representation.
That's waterfall.
Yeah,
I'd
because the
say C
structure
is
is almost like set in cement. So
D is waterfall.
C as well.
This one,
No, take that. Sorry,
this
Thea,
one
you go ahead. Sorry,
talks
Thea,
about
you go ahead.
this one talks about prioritized requirements lists. That sounds very agile to me. What do you think?
The mandatory is throwing me off though.
Mandatory requirements. So if they are prioritized high as must do's, they'd be mandatory, right?
Well, if you take it there, then yes, I could agree with you.
You still have mandatory stuff in Agile. MVP design things, regulations, industry standards, and whatever. That doesn't mean it's not agile or adaptive.
Okay, let's test this one. Adaptive approaches focus on rapid delivery and business value in short iterations, and it talks about prioritizing your requirements. Let's go on. You're the business analyst on an initiative. Which of the following would you consider when determining the optimal approach for conducting business analysis activities? So you want to determine your optimal approach. Which task are we in?
the first one.
You're right. Business analysis approach. So is it the number of business areas affected, the size of the change, the complexity and risk, or geographic and cultural considerations? Several of these could be right. There's one that is most right.
I would
I was
say
gonna ask
C.
where the select all button is. It wasn't for one, maybe.
There isn't a select all here. There never
Right.
will be. I promise.
I go with A.
I agree
Okay.
with A as well.
All right. Let's test A. Okay, this is partially true as it is a factor that impacts complexity, but it is not a stated element for the planned business analysis approach task, which is the task you're performing. Complexity and risk is a stated element. It's in the elements list. The other three responses are factors that can impact complexity. So this is the
Complexity
only
and
one
risk. Yeah.
that it actually says that you need to check.
Gotcha.
All right. 3.1.4.5 is where that's located. Okay, we've got about 28 minutes left to go. I hope y'all are holding on. We're going to make it through this. Which of the following best describes the inputs for the planned business analysis information management task? So it's only wanting inputs for this one task. If you memorize the inputs, you're going to be golden here. Business policies, business analysis approach, governance approach. Information management tools, business analysis approach, governance approach. Information management tools, business policies, business analysis approach, or business analysis approach, stakeholder engagement approach, and governance approach. Now, I want to draw your attention to something before we go on. Planned business analysis information management is right here. Governance approach has not even been, you haven't even done it, because this is one of the few things that you kind of do in order. So governance approach is probably not going to be an input to this task. So
C.
which one do we think is the correct answer?
C.
No, it's probably between A and C, because governance approach is not supposed to be there now.
But A has governance approach in it.
Ah, good point.
Yep. Let's test this one. I'm not always right, guys. I'll do the best I can. Oh my goodness, I know I'm wrong. So these are the inputs: is business analysis approach, stakeholder engagement approach, and governance approach. That's right. That is one that is.
You said it was in order, but governance is before information management.
Governance is before that. I was thinking governance was after it. It is my fault. I'm so sorry. So
if you look on the diagram on page 43 of the BABOK, they're in that order in D.
They are, aren't they? Let's see. I've got it right.
I love those flow charts. That's, like I said, the main way I got stuff into a short-term memory for the exam. And frankly, after all these years of studying this stuff, I'm not sure how I passed that exam.
So he's right. Here are the three inputs into planned business analysis information management.
But I know I memorized or had a really strong impression of these flowcharts.
Bob thinks in flowcharts and
I think in pictures, diagrams, arrows, 8x10 color glossy photos with circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one.
Also, a column might apply that same technique.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Next one. You know, I told y'all not to grab it yourself whenever you make a mistake. I just did, and I grabbed it myself. So here we are. You're developing an approach for how business artifacts will be stored, accessed, and shared. Which set of stakeholders would you involve in this task? So what task do you develop the approach for how business artifacts will be stored, accessed, and shared? Which one of those is it?
Sounds like information. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
So now it wants to know which set of stakeholders are assigned to this task. Would it be the sponsor, domain subject matter expert, regulator, and customer, the project manager, domain subject matter expert, regulator, and sponsor, the domain subject matter expert, regulator, and sponsor, or the domain subject matter expert, tester, and regulator? Can we eliminate any of these answers?
What's the regulator doing there? It's a compliance document? Or it doesn't really matter, huh?
I think you
Regulator?
can.
Would you
Okay.
disqualify the regulator for this answer? Narrowing it down to B and C, probably.
Well, regulators in all four answers, so I don't think we can disqualify
Yeah.
regulator.
All four? Oh,
I
Gossie,
would
what do
take
you
out
think?
D.
I don't think the customer should be involved in this. So I will
Right.
definitely eliminate A.
Good point,
Point.
Kelsey.
So between
I don't
B,
know.
B and D actually.
Yeah. I'm a soft D.
Okay.
Softy.
Very soft D.
Okay, so what do we think the right answer is?
B.
D is dog,
We'll go with B too.
B is in boy. Okay, let's test it.
Ah.
Project manager is
C.
not one of the stated stakeholders for this task, but
Mhm.
it is domain subject matter expert, regulator, and sponsor. They help define the approach of how the stored, accessed, and shared. Can y'all think of why the domain subject matter expert would have impact on this?
Because they're the domain subject matter expert. They know the functions and the responsibilities and the roles and I guess maybe the way of doing things of the work. The impact, the dependencies, they're more of an expert in that in their area. So it's good to have them when you're creating documentation.
Also, they may need access.
That's it. They would need access. Let's say you have a system that you build and the domain subject matter expert knows where that documentation is, and then something happens. They upgrade the system or they bring in a new module or they decommission something. The subject matter expert needs to be able to access that documentation and make updates or maybe even pull it to say, this is what we did before. So they need input.
Okay.
Ryan is I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said okay. I
All right.
already have a problem with how
Okay.
the way Babok is set up, but I get it.
Ryan is a business analyst working in an IT transformation project related to risk data consolidation. He has identified the business analysis activities required to complete each deliverable, the sequence of those activities, and the tasks related to each activity. Halfway into the planning of these activities, Ryan is faced multiple challenges which the organization had experienced in a past project. How could Ryan have saved himself from facing similar challenges? So the same thing has happened again. What could he have done better to keep that from happening? So we
Reviewed
are
lessons
on,
learned.
that's right. We are on identify business analysis performance improvement. So we can learn how to measure ourselves. Ryan should have worked with his project manager to help identify the types of activities the business analyst should perform. Ryan should have reviewed lessons learned documents to understand the organization's previous experiences with planning. Ryan should have conducted interviews with other business analysts to get their suggestions and validate his plan. Or Ryan should have reviewed the various organizational asset documents available to provide him with better planning information. What does the BABOK say is the right answer?
Is it B?
Why do you like B?
It makes the most sense. Well,
Is
lessons
it what
learned.
makes sense to you
Lessons,
or what the BABOK says?
I don't know what the Babok says.
Okay,
Lessons learned sounds good.
I understand. If you were the one writing the answers, this would be the right answer, right? You're going to discover
Right.
that what the BABOK says is a
Probably
little
D though.
different. Okay. I've got a vote for B and a vote for D. Can I get a second vote?
I want to go with a midpoint D.
Okay. Okay, let's check D and see what the answer is. So
It is B. Ha.
it
B was my
agrees with you
first
this
one.
time. So correct answer, reviewing the lessons learned documents from previous similar projects will help Ryan to understand the challenges that were faced in planning and the success strategies that work to avoid repeating the same mistakes in future projects. This one, the organizational assets, is one way to learn about policies, working models, best practices of the organization, but may not provide the understanding of similar mistakes from past projects that could help Ryan.
And the
Go ahead.
Lessons learned.
I was just going to say the organizational asset documents are like templates and things like that, yes?
They could be organizational asset documents would be templates, but they may also be working models, best practices, policies, things like that.
There's a strong overlap between B and D, I think, but B is the standard answer for anything like that. Project management, design, business analysis, everything. That's why you do it. And most organizations do not do enough of it, nor do they consult that stuff enough. So don't be afraid. You know, I was told when I got back from leadership school in the Army that, you know, we don't care about what you learn, we're doing it my way. And well, that's garbage. Do it the right way. There's a reason this stunningly obvious thing is hammered in every body of knowledge. So sometimes you do go with the obvious answer, and that's one of them.
And sometimes it's just that easy, but we will overthink it a couple of times before we get there.
Sometimes you gotta take the gimmies. It's a long, not easy test.
Right.
So.
Which of the following is not a component of risk analysis and management technique? So this is a technique that's included in one of these tasks. Is it the risk response plan, the impact of risk, the likelihood of occurrence, or the ease of detectability of a risk? If you've looked at that technique, it's got a list of components.
I've never heard of B before.
I think it's option D.
I go with D as in David.
Yeah.
Why do you think ease of detectability of a risk is not a component in risk analysis and management technique?
With risk analysis, I think the technique is impact and likelihood of risk, and then you need the risk response plan as a part of mitigating the risk. But I've never heard of ease of detectability of a risk.
I agree with
Never
you.
heard of
I
it.
agree with you. I think Bob is confused more. So this is a component of the failure mode and effect analysis, which is not in the BABOK. It's a totally different profession, way of
More
thinking.
of a Six Sigma thing.
Thank you. Thank you. This is not a component of risk analysis. I've had people say, I'm going to study for the BABOK and the Six Sigma and 3 other things at the same time. And I'm thinking their brains are going to melt because this stuff it doesn't conflict, but you can get confused between it, you know? So one thing at a time.
It's great
tell
to
them
have
that too, though.
learned all that stuff. You can cross-pollinate
Yeah.
when you
After you take
don't
the
have to take the test. But
Right.
when you have to take the test, you need to keep things in their separate buckets. And
Right.
this annoying orange bucket is your huckleberry right now.
Why is it important for a business analyst to understand roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders within the organization? This is like 2 sentences in that task. For roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders. So I think we're in stakeholder engagement. To understand how the stakeholders will contribute to the initiative, to help with the development of the RACI matrix, to categorize stakeholders in the power interest grid, or to understand stakeholders' attitudes and manage them.
Option A.
Yeah,
I go
say
with
A.
A as an apple with dish, I think is mentioned. Just to call out A as an apple.
What is RAS matrix? What's that? Remind me.
The RACI matrix.
Yeah, what's
The RACI matrix is a method.
accountability? Is it that's that it?
Yes. Accountability, it's responsibility, accountability, inform, and
Consulted.
consult and inform. I have a whole presentation I can give you on that one, but not today.
So yeah, she loves racing.
I do.
It's who does what.
It's who does what, but I also added the when, how do they deliver it, what's the result, how do you track it, and it creates accountability. I've made it better. Okay, so the answer is to understand how the stakeholders will contribute to the initiative, Understanding roles and responsibilities of stakeholders will help the BA understand how the stakeholders will contribute to the initiative. Okay.
Is the power interest grid, is that a BABOK thing or no? Because again, too many certs in the background with too many guides. I'm familiar with it, but I don't know if I've ever read it in BABOK.
I think I've got it open here. Do it this way. And
That
we will do
one fooled me, by the way. I thought it was.
power. We've got power of influence, power of degree.
I learned it in PMP. So I understood it.
That's what I'm saying. I got PMP, I've got Six
Yeah.
Sigma, I've got it all under my belt, but
Yeah.
it just, so I don't know if it was a BABOK term, so I guess it's not. So I'll just write it out of my mind for the next few months until I take the test.
Yeah.
I don't recall it being here, so I don't know. Let's get back to this also. Okay.
Renewing is easier than getting.
Once we get it, we're fine. Nick reported on the results of his analysis and identified any necessary preventative, corrective, and developmental actions. What task is Nick doing?
Report on the results. Probably maybe the last one, performance. We report on the results. Analysis, performance management.
That's
Okay.
right. So this is the task we're in right here. Once potential performance improvements are identified, they become guidelines for the next time the task is executed. The potential improvements will be used in the post-implementation review to keep a record of reference as inputs into the next performance review, or the potential improvements will form part of the organizational process assets, or OPAs. Can we eliminate any of these?
Maybe C, put C in a corner for now.
Okay.
So what is Nick? Nick reported on the results of the analysis and identified any necessary preventive, corrective, developmental actions, and that's for what? He's doing something. Once potential performance improvements are identified, they become guidelines for the next. I want to say correct answer is A. It's fat enough to be the correct one.
It's fat enough. It's the longest answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Do we
gonna
have a
say
second
A.
vote?
Yes, I'll say A.
Okay, we got 2 votes for A. Let's test it. Identifying improvements for future considerations serves as a continuous improvement loop. This one, I don't know that OPAs are even in the BABOK.
It says that that exact sentence in the book.
Mm-hmm. It is. Very often this is going to be a quote. Okay. Assessing stakeholders' attitudes about the project is important. Which of the following best describes the factors to consider? If we're assessing stakeholders' attitudes about the project, what task are we in?
Engagement. Plan and stakeholder engagement.
Very good. Attitudes toward the business goals, objective of the initiative, business analysis in general, project sponsor, and other stakeholders. Attitude toward the collaboration, teamwork, and other stakeholders and their job. Attitude toward business analysis, project methodology, the sponsor, and the project manager. Or attitude toward the objective of the initiative, their job, and the organization. There is a list in the BABOK that matches one of these. Which one is it?
I'd say A for me.
Option A.
Okay, I see 2 votes for A. Not an inclusive list, but all stakeholder attitudes in this response are specifically stated along with their attitude toward any proposed solution and the team-based collaboration. Thank you very much. Those of you who haven't spoken up very much, I would really like to hear you. Those of you who have spoken up a lot, take a breath and give some of the people that don't speak so fast opportunity so that they can. I don't want them to feel like they just check out and they don't pay attention anymore.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. XYZ is a new organization that uses agile methodology. The organization is looking for an easy way to share business analysis information. The stakeholders decide on a whiteboard. Is this, according to the BABOK, a viable solution? Answer A, the whiteboard is a viable information management tool. No, the information shared on a whiteboard can be too easily altered or erased, and so it's too risky. Yes, stakeholders involved in the project are in the best position to determine how to share business analysis information. Or no, information management tools must enable the reuse of business analysis information.
Option D.
Okay, why do you like D?
From my own personal experience, having worked in a bank, being a scrum master and also a product manager, we tend to capture this information in form of JIRAs. And whenever we do come across a similar situation or a similar JIRA, or wherein a similar task has to be repeated, we always link it with a parent JIRA.
That's true. That's true. But what does the BABOK say about whiteboards?
Sorry.
This is an agile methodology as well.
I would go with B because that's how I feel, but I don't know if it's Babok-y.
Oh, we gotta get BABOK-y, guys.
I'm gonna be I'm gonna say A just because we use it a lot. Yes, it can be altered, but we have a tendency to take pictures of it, so we
Okay,
can
so
maintain
you're
it.
using
I
your
agree with
personal
Robin.
experience, not what you read in the BABOK, right?
Yeah, I'm using my personal
Okay.
experience, which is
Okay.
Robert,
Well,
I
we're
agree
doing
with
a test
Robin.
today. And A is correct. BABOK says, according to the BABOK, each organization uses some tools to store, retrieve, and share business analysis information. This information management tool may be as simple as a whiteboard or as complex as a global wiki. Now, I have brushed up against whiteboards and destroyed somebody's work, you know. I know in real life, whiteboards are like, what? Or, take pictures of it. But the BABOK says whiteboard is a viable tool.
I also want to add before you even move on, in the agile methodology, they recommend that as one of the best ways because you can put your sticky notes on the board. They do recommend that as one of the techniques as you can use as you move along to iterate your process.
I love sticky notes on a board, especially when you're doing process flows. You can move them around. Whiteboards
Same.
don't
I
lose the sticky.
also love them for gathering, brainstorming and getting all the ideas and related
Yes.
groups.
Yep.
I love that.
It's funny. I feel very passionate about whiteboards and sticky notes and color markers too. It's okay. I had a
Michelle. That's
student in another
Michelle.
class.
Yeah.
I had a student in another class tell me I could not start studying until my 3 orders from Amazon and Office Depot came in. So I had the right pins and I'm like, cool, you do you. Okay,
Back to school sales are my favorite.
which of the following statements best describe an adaptive planning approach? Yes, that's right, Bob. Adaptive approaches, we're in plan stakeholder engagement because that's how we are in plan business analysis approach. Adaptive approaches focus on rapid delivery of business value in short iterations. Formal documentation is produced before the solution is developed and implemented. Adaptive approaches do not require documentation, or most business analysis work occurs in the beginning of the project or during one specific phase. Which one is the best answer according to the BABOK?
A.
I would say A.
A.
Yeah, say A.
Very good.
Short iteration.
Way
Hey.
to go, Captain Obvious.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all to read through chapter 3 again. Read through the techniques that I gave you in the techniques to task or tasks to techniques, whatever that tab is called, so that you can envision using that technique in that task for that purpose with those inputs, with those outputs, and with those stakeholders. Go through the elements of each one. Let me go here and here. These elements are critical for you to understand. This is the guts of what this task is. If you just know the task name and the inputs and outputs, and you don't know the elements, you're hurting yourself. So learn the guts, and then it all rolls up underneath that task name. All right. Next week, next Thursday, we are going to continue to go through chapter 3 with the practice test questions. You're going to find that as you study, you're going to do better and better. You're going to look at this and go, I know that answer. And you're almost going to surprise yourself. It's like, I know that answer. So I look forward to you coming back with more confidence and more information and focusing more on what does the BABOK say than what makes sense to you or what do you do. I've seen every single student have to go through this transition. Okay. Before we leave, we've got 3 minutes and I want to honor our time commitment. I want to let you out on time, especially since some of you, it's very late. Do we have any last questions?
Yeah, did you get my address? I sent it you in the chat.
Yes, I did. And I've updated. I just checked. I've got every single address. I've got every single phone number except for Dulce Sanchez or Candy Sanchez because she registered on both names. I need to talk to her, or I guess it's her. But I've got everyone else's. I'm going to turn it in the morning for them to send out the books. They said that they would send them out within just a few days. You should have it within a week if they don't have can't send to that country or whatever thing. Rejoice, I did get your Austin, Texas address. So I'll have it sent to Austin, Texas for you instead of Canada. Unless he says he can send it to Canada.
Yeah, that would be preferable, but if he can't, it's fine. He can send to the Texas address.
All right. All right. Okay, guys, I want you to know you're on the very beginning of a important journey. And I'm really appreciative of those of you who speak up. Those of you who try to speak up and then stop. I'm going to just keep watching because I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to call on you whenever you do. And if we need to, we can raise hands because I want to be sure that you get an opportunity to contribute. We learn from each other, and your contribution shows us things that we wouldn't see otherwise. So that's why it's important that we have the conversations. I will see y'all next Thursday. If you have any questions, either reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to me on the president email, and I will respond to you as soon as possible. Okay?
Thanks, Dia.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Y'all have a
you. Have a good
wonderful
night.
week.
Bye.
I'll see you later.
Yep,
Bye.
bye-bye.